Gary, maybe we can start with you since I think you're like the gig economy piece of this panel.
I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
For all the people that like humans,
Yeah.
I'm the guy.
Yeah.
You're overrated.
Give us a temperature check of the gig economy right now. Like, what are you seeing at a high level? Where is it shifting? What's exciting? What's scary?
Yeah, it's a really interesting time. I think the major changes sort of over the last decade are the number of roles available to people. So 10 years ago, it was mostly you can do rideshare, or you can do delivery. Now you can do shopping, you can do a lot of pets, you can do IKEA furniture, you can do substitute teacher. And then I think the other big change that is happening is just the level of competition to attract and retain people.
So you're not seeing the human need in this diminishing rapidly?
Not yet.
Because I think that's like the media, that's the narrative, is that as all this autonomy, these robots get deployed and people can get their food in all kinds of different ways, it's already leading to unemployment. And in reality, you're saying it's the opposite.
Well, not yet. I think the big question, you can probably guess this, is 80 degrees in the money pressure, so I like history. When the power boom was invented in like 1790 or something, the price of textiles plummeted, demand was very elastic, and the number of people working in the textile industry went up dramatically over the next 100 years. I was talking to someone who, I won't get the platform, but they just ordered 4 Chipotle bowls for their family. It's $120 to get delivered. My sense is if automation robots and delivery, I think what we really know now though is that the role, I think that's really what everyone's sort of watching and trying to figure out.
And by the way, feel free to jump in. If you guys have a reaction to that, I would love to hear it.
Well, one of my advances was building a place called Curbivore University, which is a futurist teaching place. And this question is one of the most common questions come up: what happens as automation replaces human beings? And the history of that goes back centuries to today. We've got to trace a history of books describing, oh my God, the robots are going to take all, machines are going to take all the jobs. And these books have come out regularly for the last 200 years, and they have always been wrong. It's never been the case that employment went down because of machines. Jobs certainly changed. 200 years ago, 50% of people, or 98% of people worked in agriculture. 100 years ago, 50% worked in agriculture. Machines did replace all of that, and yet we're all doing more. One of my favorites is a letter that some people got together and saw this big danger of machines taking jobs. And they said, we should write a letter to the president, like Albert Einstein did in the 1930s about the danger of technology. So they wrote the letter to the president explaining all this. The letter began, Dear President Johnson. So people have been saying this and worrying about it and been wrong every single time.
And to the more concretely also in the world of delivery, what you see is there's sort of 2 key points here. One is, as was already said, today there are a lot of deliveries, a lot of things that you will not order on the delivery app, just because my favorite thing is like McDonald's order, right? Like I'm not going to pay double for my my Happy Meal because it's going to show up on the delivery app. And if you're able to bring the cost of delivery down using automation, and like our North Star at LYFT is like $1 delivery. What happens is you see incredible market expansion because now people start going and getting things at their doorstep that previously were far too expensive. I think that's one key point. The other thing is, I think it's been said in multiple panels today that we think there's going to be a world where which is multimodal, right? So there will be a world where humans work in tandem with
for you as a speaker, you guys have a lot of employees, and you're also doing robotics. And also, when you talk about the certifications, when you guys are doing intersection robotics.
Yeah, for sure. So that's one of the things since I've worked there, and just basically the whole time. We've been trying to figure out how we could continue to deliver on our promise of high quality food, to build more on constant convenience, which has evolved a lot in the last 16 years. And what that has done is put us under pressure on our workforce to be the most friendly, hospitable people, extremely accurate, very, very fast all at once. And it's created a job that's really very, very challenging. And so what we love about the kitchen, which is the automated system that we use in our restaurants right now, again, not all of that, but some of that, is it takes away the pressure of speed and accuracy, putting that into the machine, and it allows our teams to focus on hospitality and the prep. So we're still prep everything fresh in-house every day, but now you put it into one place versus splitting it on digital line and front line. And you take away the pressure of making things really, really fast and accurate from the human, and allow the humans to finish with quality check and interact with customers, helping navigate the menu. So as we go into, as we begin deployments in more places, we've seen lower turnover in our teams, and we've seen much happier team members in our it's in a way that in our minds, it allows us to open the locations, which creates more jobs people actually want.
Because I think the attention people imagine is if you can see the robots next to them and they know that they're coming from you, it creates this resentment. But you're saying, you know,
Yeah, we've actually done, of the locations we have live right now, 3 of them have been retrofits. So we've taken existing locations in Chicago and New York and converted them, and the team members love them. They're all smiles, they can't say anything bad about them because they still are finishing, we're still putting avocado on the hand, fresh herbs, salmon, checking the bowls. We're just not having to waste through 55 ingredients in 15 minutes on 100 bowls at a time. We have to focus and actually want to engage with customers.
Yeah, I think that's a very thoughtful approach. I think one of the key lessons from the infamous and now called Zoom Pizza, when they tried to automate everything, I think the time it took to create pizza from start to finish basically was like 75% slower than what it was all people in the kitchen. So I think looking for opportunities where 1 plus 1 equals 3 is really where this is exciting. Is able to not only one, make it much more efficient and more companies will grow and create new opportunities, but also can create roles that are better for people, better for individuals working on. Another sort of interesting lesson from Zoom is your banker drivers 24 miles an hour, pretty good, and give them out the income. Still, all the drivers, even if they were 4.5 degrees, they wanted more flexibility. So I think being really thoughtful about what do people want, what do they accelerate, what do they do really well, and then putting them in a position where they can focus on that is very thoughtful.
Brad, and you're providing work and research and consulting you've done. Do you think about the new kind of jobs that will be made as a result of this automation?
I mean, I do, and yet, usually there's a better factor. There's no one who's not problem here who's going to be that. It is a little bit facile to say that, like the movie Shakespeare in Love, it didn't work out. It was a mystery. And yet it always has, and not some of them finally guilty that they went through, but I usually see 2 types of reactions to automation and things work. Some people think that, well, I got it, he does what I do, what does that mean for my career, what does that mean for me? And there's other people who say, shut up and take my own. I want that as soon as I can get it. I don't want to do this. I think we'll see that happening for a long time. And we are going to definitely see it driving. I know there's a few drive Uber in here. I worked at Waymo. We were definitely trying to make that one. It didn't come up in the Waymo panel this morning, although there was a lot of useful information there. Is they didn't talk about the fact that you said you want to deliver to be $1, humans are not doing it for $1. Waymo is today priced almost the same as Uber in this. That is not the long-term plan. No dark secret. The long-term plan is is going to be significantly cheaper, and so not going to be two people saying, I want a human driving to the airport and have my bag. It's 3 times the money to do that. So if you think driving is, but how many people view driving as a career? And I don't want to insult the people in this room, some of them are, but most people don't see it as a career. And so I think the world will have to.
The AI piece of this is fascinating to me. It feels like there's a real unlock happening with transformer architectures that are really happening with machine learning as it relates to robotics. And you all are really at the forefront of that. Can you talk a little bit about why it seems like robotics and logistics is really starting to see this unlock with respect to AI as well?
Yeah, sure. When we got started at Value, I had customers in the autonomous vehicle world in my previous company. I was speaking for a company about that. And basically, the autonomous vehicle of the day was 50, 60 sensors and a server at the front of the car. Right? And I always have customers who come to me and say, hey, my system works, but now I need to reduce the cost by a factor of 20. How do I do that? And so what has now become possible with the new wave of AI foundation model is actually that we have really been able to build, because I think what AI foundation model is able to do now is really able to solve robotics problems in a more generalized way. That was really not possible without 100 engineers rewriting code and remapping the city and all that bunch of data collection and so on. So we have been able to do away with those things. And we built effectively the robotic economic system that I talked about to 15 people for 15 million dollars. And I think that's what has become unlocked today with some of these new paradigms. And also what that means concretely from the robot itself is that you can actually build these robots for $5,000 completely, and it can be autonomous because it has some of these factors running on single pieces too. And so that's the sort of stuff that's become possible. And I think this is going to unlock, and it already is unlocking tremendous innovation and robots of all different types of form factors, which is coexisting with the same network.
What's your ultimate biggest customer success story so far?
Yeah, we had a customer who basically, our first product is a robot that is capable of, driving on like a human on a bicycle. And so we had a customer who thinks that, okay, that's great, but I have this problem, which is this has to go delivered at the customer's doorstep. And how are we going to solve that really complex architecture problem? And basically, we were able to prove to them that this AI model is capable of not just driving on the street, but then they turn to a driveway and give it a very unstructured driveway with trash cans, with parked cars, and kids' toys everywhere, and still find its way to the doorstep. And then the customer said, but how about I actually like these particle dogs, I don't really like this system. And we said, okay, that's fine. We can port the model over and show you what it was completely different.
And for you guys, they have these two little robots, and I assume they're AI. But how does that work? How much of it is this generalized approach you're talking about versus how much you have to map out ahead of time, or you can have it all?
We actually do both. So we do the deliveries anywhere in the country now. It's been one of our core philosophies from that perspective. The robot gets smarter and more reliable, but more often in terms of hours and particular sidewalks. So it learns as it goes. But our day one question to ourselves as business goes, how many deliveries have we done today? And with my work with we mapping, that slows it down. So we learn as we go, do more as robots get smarter. I think the other piece that's really critical here is not only do we need these incredible foundational models, compute on the edge has become much more powerful. And so we have the orchestration in the cloud, we have onboard compute, we have these foundational models. You have these robots that take unstructured, dynamic environments. And if you just think about a sidewalk in Los Angeles, there could be somebody hanging out
glad you're on the line. Tim, I'd be really curious to hear, you sort of skirted around some of the destruction, creation, and transformation of jobs. How do you think about educating, explaining how to start working with robots? What's the why behind it? How do you think about doing that with humans?
Yeah, so when we acquired Spice in 2021, they had 2 operating locations in Boston, with a machine that was very similar to what we have today with some modifications that we made. The biggest thing we did, though, was think about how a team do at scale, how humans interact with this device. They have 2 locations of a ton of engineers who are really handling, those operations themselves. We knew that it had to be incredibly easy for any hour member to clean it, repair it, swap things out, keep it running. And we spent really 2 years focused on those details. And I have to say, it's the thing that I'm most proud of the work is we have no issues whatsoever with the teams using it's incredibly simple, it's very intuitive to them. Teaching them to, refill the automation is as simple as refilling the front line. Something that they're very used to and familiar with. There's iPads that essentially help them control startup, the breakdown. So all of that was pretty straightforward. We haven't had a whole lot of training really until now. I think developing it now as we scale this to more and more applications. But we were dealing with potentially a couple, SOPs and a phone number if they have a question, and the teams really understood it. I think because we were so focused from a design perspective on how it had to work at hundreds of locations, that really helped us make it easy for the team members that we hired to interact with it.
And just piggyback on that, I do agree that not just we talk about data and I don't think any robotics company today has to spend a lot of time thinking about human interaction and human interface design. And that's true for delivery of work as well, because delivery of work is that human many different situations. And so I do think that as much as and AI can help as well, because AI can make you be able to talk to the robot and understand what's wrong. But I do think robot and human interaction and human interface design is a huge part of modern robotics. And I think it's going to become even more important as the AI stuff becomes more important.
One of the most promising areas of AI is education. So it's just beginning to see this, the ability to build very interactive, customized training for people for whatever is going to go on. And that wasn't planned as part of this, but it seems to go up. On the robots and delivery, there's a couple of interesting things. I always look for things that the robot can do that humans can't do or won't do. Now, when it comes to restaurants, robots don't go into the restaurant pick up the order. Some restaurants cannot. But they will arrive before the order is ready and you sit there because they don't mind waiting the way humans do. Human drivers do not want to come to a restaurant and sit for 10 minutes waiting for the order to come. And a robot has no problem with it, so it's going to get the order the moment it starts to cook. It's going to actually be better for the customer.
I think that's a really interesting note, because we say things like automation creates jobs, but it does require a transition. Long-haul truck driving is sort of famously rough job. I think it's got the highest rate of disability, second highest rate of divorce, second highest rate of fatality. It's a tough job.
And turnover is over 100%.
Yeah, and if we waited along and got rid of all of those jobs, automated them overnight, those people are probably in a worse position. And so I think it's important to be cognizant for companies that are transitioning roles and transitioning the needs of their workforce to think about what's the right role for the right people, give workers certain things in terms of pay, flexibility, schedule, and then what's the environment, what's the job that I'm doing. But pains look very different to different people. Do they care about maximizing total cash time? Do they care about stability, benefits? Do they like people? Do they like just being able to put in podcast? I think they're cognizant about why are we doing this? help ensure that big organizations are making these transitions, maintain trust, but also keep people motivated and continue to work with them.
Is this continuing or on, like right now, when we introducing humans to robots in the flow phase? Seems like inevitably becomes coexisting, like where it's not really like out there arguing, but it's like how do we fully coexist with these machines? And then eventually, I don't think the third phase would be how do we help the robots do their job? Do we agree with that phase approach, or, and obviously we're on the early side of it, but I'd be curious to hear your reactions to that.
Well, some of us have to robots do their job, but a lot of people do different things. Are good tasks for humans in our reporting. Some of which don't exist today, some of which do exist, but they're not necessarily on the robot. Other than when you say, I think most people will be using some sort of machine, sort of robot in their work. It's pretty rare these days to not use machine to work.
I think for the sidewalk, but what's the sidewalk now? And then I think the lower SUV is actually more people will walk next to the robot and drive through things and how long that is costing. And we'll have a review of the robot. And so back to that sort of human interaction, the design, the behavior, the understanding of the robot is absolutely critical. Like you said, I never really want. We're building smart cities. We can imagine that we are including APIs and conflicts that can be in more robot behaviors, more EVs, that our sidewalks and our bike lanes also include different realities in the actual city and how we can help people and mindsets. So my personal would love to see is robots improving on
And interesting, you guys think about that when you design the robots. You want it to be friendly, just that's how people are experiencing it.
we want to add other communities in the model, from the cities, the health factor is people. And so the robots will be built around ADA, wheelchair footprint, we don't want to require that person's shoulders being mobility. That's what that weird sidewalk community they're like, oh, we go, all of that, all those things in one of the
I found it bad to thank the people by saying, you are a good kitty class.
And I don't think that continuing to fix right to long term. I think the research side is so good enough that they become also seamless. Ultimately, we talk about robots, being this independent entity, and I think that will be the students. And that's always going to be evolving, getting better, and getting more transparent in certain domains, and less transparent and requiring more domain.
Is there a future for specifically where robots do basically all of the work of preparing, like you can prep and modify the roads, because it's dexterity, models, and perceive the world better, and you just become almost more like concierge, like the person in front, like the hotel, the way humans, the customers, feel the brand, but the robots are actually doing all the work. Do you see that in the future?
Yeah, I think there's a future where more and more goes through the automation. I'll say we intentionally refer to it as automation as integrated versus robots. Because we want to compare it to our teams. There are things in assembly that I think we're working on today that hopefully get more and more integrated into automated assembly. In terms of compressors, absolutely. I mean, teams are already using tools in the back of the house that help them cut things more efficient. Certainly involve robotics in that. I think for us, the biggest thing about our brand is that it's supposed to be a place that you feel like you're part of the community. And so we want people to want to come into the street range and spend time there. And if you go into an empty room with full music, you don't really want to stay by yourself. And so as we've been designing and learning about the form factor of this and how it fits into our restaurants, our that kind of gives you a sense of belonging whether or not you're talking. So I think there always needs to be a component, but we do have a position that we call host. That is intended to like guide you through the menu, walk you through ordering, give you recommendations. We're beginning to bring things like programming, specific tasting, sampling days, some of these formats that people feel essentially belonging and not just
That's really fascinating. I think really interesting idea to sort of open up the data and make it more human-centric. One question that I have is, as you introduce more automation into the kitchen, have your hiring or recruiting practices changed at all to focus on people that are more comfortable operating with technology than your sort of existing workforce?
I would say that, and again, back to what I was saying before, we designed it in a way that's pretty simple to interact with. So it's one of the teams who is curious about technology versus experts in technology. If anything, actually, the intentional workforce is you have a smaller team, and you actually talk about in the restaurant space, cross-training, flexible. You're actually asking essentially every team member working, whether you're hot prep, your cold prep, to be able to interact with customers, to want to interact with customers. And so we need to be able to have the person who's been in there, trying to fail all morning, slide up with it, help someone navigate the menu. Where previously you would have a learn workforce that can be separated as your service focus and you're not. So I think the requirement for all core team members now is becoming a little bit more your extroverted defined.
We're getting towards time here. I'm curious if there's anything we need to leave everyone here with in terms of overall, excited about the opportunity that we see, whether it's like a business or just general. Is there anything that's like step out the wall for you? How to think about this transition and introducing more automation to the lives of the economy?
We've helped a handful of companies who are introducing new roles as a result of automation or changing business lines. And the sort of guiding principle that